I'm going to start out this morning talking about jumping rope because it will help you get to know who I am. And I don't even know if kids anymore jump rope. I'm sure there's not an app for it, and there's probably no way to make it electronic. But I remember from my own childhood how much I learned about life from learning to jump rope. So I'm going to start there and then work my way into a similar topic, learning to be a better Unitarian Universalist, learning to be the best Unitarian Universalist. I can still remember my first jump rope. The cord was blue and white stripes with red handles. I must have been 5, maybe 6, because it was just before I started school. I had watched the older girls in the neighborhood who were having so much fun jumping rope. And I told my dad when we were out one day that I wanted one of my own, and he bought it for me. And as soon as I got home, I grabbed the handles and I swung that rope over my head. And maybe I didn't do it hard enough because the rope went behind me and then it went all limp and collapsed on my head and shoulders. Or maybe I was too short for the rope because I remember later wrapping it around my hands a couple of times. Even then, I couldn't make it work. It was harder than it looked. I would get it over my head, but it would hit the ground before I could lift my feet. So I did what I always did when things didn't work out the way I planned. I threw the rope on the ground and I burst into tears. And I shouted, "I hate this thing!" And my mother did what she always did. She handed me back the rope and she said, "Let's figure this out." My first lesson then was not to give up. My second was when to jump, timing my upward bound to the downward fall of the rope. I would swing the rope over my head, and my mother at the critical moment would yell, "Jump!" And I would jump, and the rope would pass under my feet. So it was swing, jump, and swish. Swing, jump, and swish. And then I would miss, and we'd start all over. It wasn't as much fun as I had imagined, but it did get easier. It helped when I learned that little trick of jumping rope. After you let the rope pass under your feet, you give a little non-lifting jump as it passes overhead again. That gives you rhythm. That gives you the feel of jumping rope. You got to get the feel of jumping rope. So I mastered it in a couple more days, at most a week. I began to hang out near the older girls on the block, learning the chants that went with the jumping. Fuzzy Wuzzy was a bear. Fuzzy Wuzzy had no hair. Fuzzy Wuzzy wasn't fuzzy, was he? Yeah, I practiced all summer. Finally, fall came and school started, and I brought my jump rope to recess, ready to be queen of the playground. I joined the girls who looked like they were planning to jump rope, only they didn't have striped ropes with red handles. They had long clothesline ropes, and 2 girls out of the group were employed in rotating assignments to turn the rope from either end, while the jumpers were free to do only that, to jump. Part of the rhythm of jumping rope that I had learned was swinging my arms overhead, so when I wasn't in control of the rope, the rhythm changed. I went home and I cried, "I hate jumping rope." So my mother enlisted my father to help us figure it out. Mother donated a piece of her own clothesline to the project, but it was the funniest thing was learning that my father had to be taught how to turn a rope. Adults don't know everything. We went through the swing, jump, swish routine again, and I picked it up faster this time than I had the original lesson. By the end of the evening, I could even do fasties, jumping rope when the rope was turned double speed. Back at school the next day, I was again ready to join in the fun, and I learned new chants. First comes love, then comes marriage, then comes Annie with a baby carriage. How many children will she have? And that's when you do the fasties and you jump rope until you miss while everyone counts your motherhood. I have no idea what we thought we knew about love and marriage and babies, but I learned that by jumping rope, you could predict a lot of things in addition to the size of your future family, just by counting your fasties. By the time I was in 3rd or 4th grade, I was an excellent rope jumper, just as I had planned it. I think that's about the time I was introduced to jumping in on time. Oh, this is something new. This meant that you didn't start with the rope limp at your feet and instruct the turners when to start turning. It meant that the rope was always turning, and you had to judge your timing so that you jumped in the center of it when it was high and over it when it came down and out before it went up again. You had to watch the rope carefully. You had to line up your body. You had to move your shoulders in the rope's rhythm. And when the rhythms matched, you could usually get in without stopping the rope. Later, the leader, the one who called for the chants or the rhythms, would let you know how many jumps you got before you had to get out. If she called 5, for instance, you jumped in, you jumped rope 5 times, and you jumped out at the same time the next girl in line was jumping in for her 5. Oh my, was that fun. The greatest skill required was jumping just once. Think about it. Jump in, jump over, jump out. If the rope came around and someone else wasn't in the arena, the next girl was kicked out of line until the next game was called. And if you were still in there when someone else was jumping in, you got the same punishment. Really high pressure. Took a lot of practice, but there was more. After you got good at jumping in on time, you graduated to 2 ropes, to the dreaded double Dutch. The turners took 1 rope in each hand and they turned them in facing directions one at a time, over and over and over. It's a whole new rhythm, a whole new game, a whole new skill to learn. Now, anyone today can move her fingers. Anyone today who can move her fingers can play a computer game. But jumping rope takes your entire body, your entire brain, and the commitment of an athlete. God, I love jumping rope. Cinderella, dressed in yellow, went upstairs to kiss a fella, made a mistake and kissed a snake. How many doctors did it take? Fasties! Here's the thing about jumping rope that I didn't know at the time I started. You learned a lot more than how to move your body, how to chant a line, how to get in and out on time. You learned self-confidence. You learned to stick to something until you got good at it. You learned to laugh at yourself so others weren't laughing at you. You learned how to empathize and to help a friend to learn what you knew. You learned how to share. You learned how to love. And you learned how to be in relationship with others. Does it sound familiar? It's the same with becoming a Unitarian Universalist. I'm serious. Think about it. No one can really teach you how to jump rope. It's something you have to put your whole mind to, your entire body. You have to catch the nuances and train yourself to understand. And the same thing is true of becoming an accomplished Unitarian Universalist. Now, as you know, many of us came out of other religious upbringings, Protestantism, Catholicism, Judaism, or knowing nothing about Unitarian or Universalism except that they sounded different and together sounded kind of like a blessing, easier than what we'd been through, fewer rules and less scolding. Many of us came out of no religious upbringing at all, but we were looking for a spiritual experience or something to teach our children that didn't make us feel foolish. And some of us came just out of curiosity, bored with Sunday brunch, or needing a response to the new neighbor who chirped, "And what church do you go to?" A few of us were born into it, but even then our experiences were different, and we had to learn to get along with the others who were as much different as we were. So we came the first time, right? Remember this? We came and we said, wow, these are people I can talk to. We came and we said, my goodness, no one mentioned God. What kind of church is this? We came and we said, I think I'd like to have a church like this. We said the equivalent of, I'd like to have my own jump rope. We came the next week all excited, only it was a different sermon or reflection or message, and we didn't get it. And it was as if a limp rope had fallen on our head and shoulders. Maybe we didn't want to come back if it was going to be like this, if they talked in that strange foreign tongue about things we didn't know anything about. But our friend, maybe the one who told us to go to this place, or the new friend we met last week when we first came, said, give it another try. We can figure this out. And we began to get into the rhythm of Sunday morning. Get up, get dressed up if you want, or simply put on clean jeans, go early, get a cup and a conversation. We began to learn the strange language, the new chants, the songs. We began to learn that you could look at the day's topic and choose not to go at all, or choose to go to the forum instead if there was one, or just listen and maybe learn something new. We didn't have to agree with it. We learned about choices. And pretty soon you realized you knew what you were doing and you felt good about it. You felt so good about it. Maybe you brought your spouse or not. Or maybe you brought your children, or not. You told your neighbors you had your own church, thank you, they'd need to invite you to theirs. And then one day someone brought out a longer rope and said, here, take this end and turn it, please. No, what they actually said was, would you like to be on the committee? What? This is something different. Turn the rope for someone else? Be on what committee? Well, I guess. What do I do? What do I do? Do I have to learn something new? Yep. But you did okay, yeah? Committees can be fun, kind of, sometimes. You can learn a little something on a committee about, say, where it all began and how this particular church got started and how it operates. Kind of interesting stuff. You learned new chants. If it is language that makes us human, one half of language is to listen. You learned that one, didn't you? But the next thing you know, they asked you to go to school or chair the committee, attend a conference, a workshop, a general assembly. And the chants were getting more complicated, full of initials, UUA, REGA. And the references to history, oh my goodness, the Cambridge platform, what the heck is that? Full of new language, renewal of energy, hope and connection, small group ministries, side with love. I was never against it. Destroy the structures of white supremacy. And if that isn't enough, they brought out a second rope, didn't they? Build your own theology. Listen, I don't need a theology, you said. I don't even believe in God, and I know enough Greek and Latin to know that theology is the study of the divine from the prefix thea, meaning God. Ye gods, do I have to do everything by myself? Well, yeah, and no. You see, there is no creed. You remember that? They told you that right up front. There's no one telling you what you have to believe, what you have to do. They told you that, and it was what made the whole thing so appealing. You got to remember that. But there's also no catechism, no test to see how you're doing, no place to confess that you might have done something stupid, or at worst, that you have a question. And then there's more. Oh, there's always more. Something to do, something to learn, something that is going to change. Here's the thing. Not all of us get to the level of skill of double Dutch or jumping in on time. It's just easier to show up every Sunday, sing a few hymns, or hum while other people are singing, listen to an interesting talk, have a cup of coffee, and go home. Okay, serve on a committee? Well, maybe I'll try it once. Make a pledge? Is that what everyone else is doing? I mean, why go any further than that? What's the point? Well, one of the chants, we call them hymns, says it. We are not our own. We are not alone. Interdependence. That's one of the points. So I know you're here this morning and I'm pretty much preaching to the choir, but I really think you will be a better person if you decide to learn to jump in on time theologically, if you haven't done so already. You wanted to be in a place where the other people talk a similar language. That's really all you wanted. Just a striped rope with red handles, just going to sit in the same place every Sunday morning and let it roll over you, and then you'll be at potluck if there is one, or home if there isn't. Goodbye. So what's great about jumping in on time? Well, besides being fun, and it is, besides being a challenge, oh yes it is, feeling an achievement, accomplishment. Did you forget what I told you earlier? It's about self-confidence, sticking to something until you got it right, got it good, laughing at yourself so others aren't laughing at you. Then there's this very difficult life lesson we all have to learn somewhere. It's called accepting change. Oh, that's a hard religious practice. We know change is inevitable. We know we can't fight it forever, but we can learn to get out of the way before it bumps us off the path. You know, I once had a man in one of my congregations challenge me, telling me that Unitarian Universalism is not a religion, isn't even an individual faith. The 7 principles, he told me, are all we've got, and they're just words. And then he sneered, "Are you going to read them to me when I'm lying on my deathbed?" No, I told him, no, the principles are for the living. For dying, you have to start practicing long before you get there. You have to practice accepting change, a change so overwhelming that eventually it does not include you. That's also a part of practicing our faith. But while you're living, there is another lesson. There is transformation, adapting yourself to the changing world. And it is changing, we know that. You don't want to go out there alone. Well, unless you're armed with some of the jumping in on time language and understanding, unless you're armed with empathizing and helping and sharing and loving and being in relationship. Learning something new, learning to be a better person, a happier person, learning what it means to be truly human, learning that it's your experience, your value system that makes your life work for you. Learning that values we share is what helps make you the best you can be. Remember I told you about that when I explained the theology of jumping rope? You're right, there's nothing to guarantee what the outcome will be if you make a larger effort, if you put your whole heart into it. There are simply opportunities, so many opportunities. You could get hooked on that fact alone. That's what got me. There is flourishing, which everybody has the right to do. There is justice making, which is quite possible if you'll take my hand and that one. We can do it together. Yeah, you do have to build your own theology, but it's already there. It's in your head. The bricks, the values are available. The lumber is here, and there is always someone to cheer you on and show you how to use a level or a drill or work on a committee. I wouldn't presume to tell you what you need to be the best person you can be. But I've been jumping rope for a long time now, and I can tell you what's worked for me and for others that I've talked to. So let me just list some of the opportunities that you can learn from and help to teach others about being a Unitarian Universalist. First, I think it's important to get the basics. First, you have to learn to celebrate your successes in life and your happinesses, Too many times in other parts of our lives, we are taught to be modest, to be quiet, to be not proud. But here, we learn that some pride is a good thing. It's only when it rolls over into hubris that you start tripping on the rope. But at the same time, when we learn pride, we also have to learn how to grieve properly. Oh my, this is something I never realized till I got in the middle of it. I've seen so many stiff upper lips, so many held back shoulders. Grief isn't about being brave. Grief is about healing, and you can't go very far in life if you don't know how to heal yourself. Elsewhere in our society, grieving is not taught well. Ask anyone what they were taught as a child about how to grieve. Maybe go to your room if you're going to cry. That was the lesson in my family. Celebration and Grief, Unitarian Universalist Theology 101. So what's next? Oh yes, you learn to laugh more. Laughing properly is a spiritual discipline, and it needs to be practiced. Laugh at yourself, laugh with others, make others laugh. And if you don't already know it, you've got to learn gratitude. Once a year is not enough for Thanksgiving. Here in this faith, we learn to be grateful for sunrises and cool breezes. We learn to be grateful for hard thumps that teach us lessons. We learn to be grateful for breathing in and out. You know what it is. When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. It's one of the chants we sing here. These things are all part of our faith, part of our lives. It's gratitude that supports the faith. It's the rope that keeps turning. But if all the above give you the master's degree of Unitarian Universalist faith, then the doctoral degree has to be forgiveness. Double Dutch on-time fasties and a dissertation. Learning to forgive is probably the most difficult and the most rewarding discipline that any faith practice can offer. Here's a true story. I once had a friend who did something that I thought was irreversible, something I couldn't fix, and I was so angry at her. Nothing I had ever done prepared me not to be angry about this. I have to admit I was angry for 5 miserable years, during which I asked over and over, why did she do it? And I nursed my anger. You know how to do that, don't you? You nurse your anger, fueling the pain with the question. And it was exhausting. So finally I decided to try to answer the answer to the question instead of asking it. I began to try to figure out why she might have done what she did. And I began to look at her life, not mine, and her needs at the time. And I began to understand her if I couldn't understand her deed. And with each concession I made to her choices, I felt my own mental and physical health improve. Took a bit of time to rid myself of the anger completely, to replace it with forgiveness, to let her know that I was no longer angry. Anger is such a heavy burden, but our faith in life, our faith in the world and in other people can help us, help you to lay anger aside. But it takes discipline, it takes practice, it takes the same kind of dedication as learning to jump rope. But I recommend that faith's curriculum to everybody. You're going to need it someday if you don't already. At the center of all this is the rope itself, and we call that rope love. It even has its own chant. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve human need to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with one another. It's in the back of our hymn book. Some churches use it regularly. It's one of the chants that we have. Can we have, oh, we do have the diagram. This is what we've been given as a chart to help us learn some of these things. This is part of the new Section 2 that we're voting on at General Assembly, possibly. We're going to continue another day of study. And there is love at its center, with little jump ropes outlining the basic values. I thought that was pretty good. The basic lessons of our faith. So remember this, whether it's jumping rope or learning to grieve or practicing forgiveness or building your own theology, this is the good news of being a Unitarian Universalist. You do not have to do it alone. You can practice with your own rope at home if you want. That will improve your skills. But ours is a covenantal faith, a faith of relationships, a faith of sharing, of learning, and of teaching together. You will find someone like my mother who says, let's figure this out. You will find someone to show you the ropes when you're new. You will find someone to be your role model, and you will be a role model and a teacher to someone else. You will be more self-confident, more loving, more empathetic, and you will be a better human being. Come on, recess is about to begin. Anyone for jumping rope? I know a lovely chant in the form of a song. It's number 86 in our hymn books.